Today, we shall be discussing Unit 5, Inclusive Education and Children with Special Needs. Concept and meaning of inclusive education. Inclusion is a philosophy in which the school welcomes every child, irrespective of his or her abilities. In a narrow sense, it is somehow admitting the child to the school setup to provide every child with equal educational opportunities. It accepts the child as they are and acknowledges their diverse needs. It is a process in which all children are allowed to participate and learn together. Therefore, inclusion is an educational approach and philosophy that provides all students with community membership and greater opportunities for academic and social achievement. It is also about making sure that each and every student feels welcome and that their unique needs and learning styles are attended to and valued. Inclusive education is educating all students in age-appropriate general education classes in the neighborhood schools with high-quality instruction, interventions, and support so all students can be successful in the core curriculum. It is a matter of accepting the child as they are and acknowledging their diverse needs. It is a process in which all children are allowed to participate and learn together, thus celebrating the diversity in human abilities. An inclusive classroom is a means to bring children with varied needs together, helping them to share their happiness and sorrows with each other. It is where each student has the feeling of belongingness to the schools. According to Lipsky and Gartner, inclusion is the provision of services to students with disabilities, including those with severe impairments, in neighborhood school, in age-appropriate general education classes, with the necessary support services and supplementary aids, both for the child and the teacher, to ensure the child's success academically, behaviorally, and socially, and also to prepare the child to participate as a full and contributing member of the society. Thus, inclusion should be seen as an opportunity for developing the child with special needs, academically, behaviorally, and socially into a contributing member of the society, along with other children of her age group. This opportunity can be provided by schools only if they bring an overall change in their physical environment, resources, curriculum, method of teaching, and attitudes of teachers and other students in the school. Integrated education. Integrated education refers to the education of children with special needs in mainstream settings. Disabled people of all age or those learners with special needs, labels being placed in mainstream education settings with some adaptations and resources, but on condition that the disabled person and or the learner with special needs labels can fit in with pre-existing structures, attitudes, and an unaltered environment. For example, the child is required to fit in to what already exists in the school. The National Policy on Education 1986 recommended integrating children with special needs in the general education system. Therefore, provisions were made for integrating education of these children in the mainstreaming schools, but they were placed either in a separate building or separate classroom. This not only led to segregation of these children in a special school or a separate classroom, but also led to separation from the society. Many educational systems have adopted an integrated education model as an interim approach in the move towards inclusive education. In the integrated education model, whenever possible, students with disability attend a regular school. Understanding disability and types of disability. Disability. A great number of functional limitations occurring in any population in any country of the world. or any restriction or lack of ability to perform an activity in the manner or within the range considered normal for a human being. Types of disability. Let's discuss types of disability. According to the Person with Disabilities Act 1995, disability includes 7 conditions. First one, blindness. Blindness refers to a condition where a person suffers from any of the following, namely, first one, total absence of sight. This term usually implies little or no visual sensitivity to the light at any level. This condition is rare, and people who are totally blind typically have severe physical damage to the eye themselves or to the visual nerves. B. Visual acuity. Not existing 6 by 60 or 20 by 200 snellen in the better eye correcting lenses. That means person has a visual acuity 20 to 200 or less in the better eye after correction. This means that an individual with normal vision sees at 200 feet. The legally blind person cannot see until he or she is within 20 feet. In addition, a person cannot be classified as legally blind if she has a field of vision no greater than 20 degrees at the widest diameter. Only about 20% of legally blind people are totally blind. Legally blind individuals typically use braille and visual aids. Then partially sighted. Limitation of the field of vision subtending an angle of 20 or worse. That means partially sighted individuals have less severe loss of vision than people in the other 3 categories. A person with partial sighted may be able to see objects up close or far away, and with corrective lenses may be able to function at normal levels. 2. Person with low vision means a person with impairment of visual functioning even after treatment or standard refractive correction. A person potentially capable of using vision for the planning or execution of a task with appropriate assistive device. Number 3. Hearing impairment is a loss of hearing in one or both ears that may be permanent or fluctuating that adversely affect educational performance. According to the Individual with Disabilities Education Act, a hearing impairment is a hearing loss, whether permanent or not, that affect a child's educational performance. This definition includes children who have the capacity to receive some auditory stimuli, including speech and language. This capacity is known as residual hearing, which can be 121 supported by the use of hearing aid. Number 4, mental retardation means a condition of arrested or incomplete development of a mind of a person which is specially characterized by subnormal intelligence. Number 5, mental illness means any mental disorder other than mental retardation. Number 6, leprosy cured person means any person who has been cured of leprosy but is suffering from A. Loss of sensation in hands or feet, as well as loss of sensation and paresis in the eye and eyelid, but with no clear and obvious deformity. B. Manifest deformity and paresis, but having sufficient mobility in their hands and feet to enable them to engage in normal activity. C. Extreme physical deformity as well as advanced age, which prevents him or her from undertaking any gainful occupation. Number 7. Locomotor impairment. A person with locomotor disability will have limited movement of body parts, disability of the bones, joints, or muscles leading to substantial restriction of the movements of the limbs, or a usual form of cerebral palsy. Some common conditions giving rise to locomotor disability could be poliomyelitis, cerebral palsy, amputations, injuries of spines, head, soft tissues, fractures, muscular dystrophies, etc. A person with locomotor disability will have limited movements, and This is because they have the restriction in the movements of the limbs, usual for because of. I'm repeating again. This locomotor disability means disability of the bones, joints, or muscles leading to substantial restriction of the movements of the limbs or any form of cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy means a group of non-progressive conditions of a person characterized by abnormal motor control posture resulting from brain insult or injuries occurring in the prenatal, perinatal, or infant period of development. Children with special needs. Number 1, specific learning disability, SLD. They are children who have normal intelligence but are not able to perform in 1 or 2 school subjects. They are number A, dyslexia, which means learning difficulties in reading. Children suffering from this disorder have normal intelligence but cannot read due to certain unexplained reasons. It may be because the child has confusion in comprehending spatial orientations of symbols, discrimination of symbols, letter reversal or transposing letters, sequencing letters, sounds and words, and so on. Second, and that blindness refers to a conditions where a person's cerebral palsy or injuries occur. Refers to a disorder with reference to written expression. The child's handwriting may be illegible and may contain improper spacing. The letters may be formed improperly and there may be numerous spelling errors. Number D, dyspraxia. It refers to the problems related to fine motor skills such as cutting, drawing, tying shoes, writing, or any difficulties with manual dexterity and coordination. Number 2, autism. It is a developmental disability and refers to the child showing severe signs of emotional disturbance. It is a brain disorder that affects the person's ability to communicate, form relations, and respond to his/her environment. Thus, these children suffer from a total loss of reality and they regard people as an object. They exhibit an inappropriate attachment to the object. They also display inappropriate behavior traits like they may cry, laugh, or show distress repeatedly for no apparent reason. They have absent or delayed language development and hence use gesture to express their needs. These children seem shut off from their peers and society and prefer to stay alone. Number 3, attention deficit hyper disorder. Children suffering from this disorder have developmentally inappropriate impulsivity, attention, and hyperactivity. It is a neurological disorder in which a subject generally exhibits impulsive behavior, short attention span, and perceptual problem. Such children have difficulty in remaining seated and they run around and talk excessively. They tend to remain distracted most of the time and they face difficulty in engaging in activities for long periods of time. Deaf, blind. It means the coexistence of hearing and visual impairment. It may not be total loss of hearing and vision. A child may be partially impaired in one or both. Then number 4 is multiple disabilities. It is an occurrence of more than one disability in the same child. Inclusive education challenges and barriers. Barriers. Although the government of India has attempted to create policies that are inclusive for people with disabilities, their implementation efforts have not resulted in an inclusive system of education, nor have they reached their goal of education for all across the country. These barriers being faced by the children with disabilities are summarized. First one, attitudinal behaviors. Negative and non-cooperating attitudes of the stakeholders like members of society, peers and teachers, etc., that hinder inclusion. Societal norms often are the biggest barriers to inclusion. All attitudes die hard, and many still resist the accommodations of students with disabilities and learning issues, as well as those from minority cultures. Prejudices against those with differences can lead to discrimination, which inhibits the educational process. The school, the teachers, and the other students ignore them and have a negative attitude towards them. They get a feeling of neither being wanted or understood. This makes children with specially needs children or disabilities apprehensive, as they are forced to feel that they are different from the other children and the world is not for other children. This attitude virtually damages their personality and affects their self-esteem. Physical barriers. In some schools, students with physical disability are expected to attend schools that are inaccessible to them. In economically deprived school system, especially those in rural areas, dilapidated, dated, and poorly cared for buildings can restrict accessibility. Some of these facilities are not safe or healthy for any students. Many schools don't have the facility to properly accommodate students with special needs, and local governments lack either the funds or the soul to provide financial help. Environmental barriers can include doors, passageways, stairs and ramps, and recreational areas. This can create a barrier for some students to simply enter the school building or classroom. Curriculum. A rigid curriculum that does not allow for experimentation or the use of different teaching methods can be an enormous barrier to inclusion. Study plans that don't recognize different styles of learning hinder the school experience for all students, even those not traditionally recognized as having physical or mental challenges. 4. Teachers. Teachers who are not trained or who are unwilling or unenthusiastic about working with differently able students are a drawback to successful inclusion. Training often falls short of real effectiveness, and instructors already straining under large workloads may resent the added duties of coming up with different approaches for the same lessons. Another barriers, number 5, language and communication. Many students are expected to learn while being taught in a language that is new and in some cases unfamiliar to them. This is obviously a significant barrier to successful learning. Too often, the students face discrimination and low expectations. Number 6, socio-economic factors. Areas that are traditionally poor and those with higher than average unemployment rates tend to have schools that reflect that environment, such as run-down facilities, students who are unable to afford basic necessities, and other barriers to learning process. Violence, poor health services, and other social factors create barriers even for traditional learners, and these challenges makes inclusion all but impossible. Number 7, funding. Adequate funding is necessary for inclusion, and yet it is rare. Schools often lack adequate facilities, qualified and properly trained teachers, and other staff members, educational materials, and general support. Sadly, the lack of resources is pervasive throughout many educational systems. Number 8, organization of the education system. Centralized education systems are really conducive to positive change and initiatives. Decisions comes from the school system's high-level authorities whose initiatives focus on employee compliance more than the quality learning. The top levels of the organizations may have little or no idea about the realities teachers face on a daily basis. Number 9. Policies as barriers. Many policymakers don't understand or believe in inclusive education, and these leaders can stonewall efforts to make school policies more inclusive. This can exclude whole groups of learners from the mainstream educational system, thereby preventing them from enjoying the same opportunities for education and employment afforded to traditional students. These are the barriers of inclusive education. That's all for today. Thank you.